Welcome to Saroyan on Screen, a year-long look at the film and television offerings of William Saroyan. I'm your host, Chris Garcia. William Saroyan saw what television was going to mean, likely after his experiences writing and being adapted for radio, though that's a topic for a future podcast. Saroyan was being contacted by producers about bringing his plays and stories to television programs in the earliest days of the medium. In 1948, television was in its infancy. There were television sets on sale across the country, and more stations were popping up. The three networks that dominated the 1950s through the 1980s, NBC, CBS, and ABC, were established by this time, as was the Dumont Network, which would fold by the middle of the decade. These were not the cash cows that radio had been for the networks, so budgets tended to be fairly low. Programs that could be recorded without having to stage them in whole, like baseball, boxing, wrestling, and live music or religious presentations, were very popular with network executives. As more money started rolling in, budgets improved. And one of the most popular forms of continuing series was the anthology program. These were shows without continuous storylines, but a series of plays or stories. These brought to life many of the classics of theater. Saroyan had pieces produced for two of the earliest. The first was an episode of Actors Studio. Debuting in September 1948 on ABC, the series produced episodes adapting stories like Poe's The Telltale Heart, Oscar Wilde's The Canterville Ghost, and even William Saroyan's My Heart's in the Highlands. By the time that Actors Studio presented Saroyan's play, it had already been canceled by ABC and moved to CBS. That episode starred Jack McQuaid, and the screenplay was written by Howard Rodman. The play was well received, though sadly no copy has been found. The second time My Heart's in the Highlands was produced for television was in 1950 by the popular series The Silver Theater. While many of the anthology shows of the time were shot live, The Silver Theater was shot on film, which allowed the episodes to be archived and repackaged. Plays shot originally for the Silver Theater were later shown as episodes of Bigelow Theater and other programs. This version of My Heart's in the Highland featured American film and theater legend Howard Da Silva as Jasper McGregor. Just a few months later, Da Silva would be blacklisted for allegedly being a communist and taking the Fifth Amendment at the House Un-American Activities Committee hearing. Though this was shot on film, there are no known copies of the episode surviving. Saroyan had many adaptations of his work appear on TV in the 1950s, as well as appearing on talk shows and news programs himself. He was not only popular for American anthology programs, but had productions of his plays on Danish, Polish, British, and Russian television in the 1950s. The first televised production of The Time of Your Life was in fact British. Franchot Tone, famed actor known for his roles in the 1930s like Mutiny and the Bounty, had mostly been doing television by 1955, when he played Joe in a touring run of the show. It was later brought to Europe, playing at the Brussels World's Fair in 1958. It was also performed in the UK for Armchair Theatre. That version also starred Susan Strasberg and Ann Sheridan, as well as Gloria Vanderbilt. This was a rousing success in the UK and had excellent notices from The Guardian. Saroyan had been shopping around The Time of Your Life for U.S. television adaptation in the early 1950s. In 1953, the Cagney deal's rental period on the rights had lapsed from their 1948 film production, and William Cagney wanted to re-up and reissue the film. Ned Brown, then at MCA Artist Representation, contacted Saroyan looking to secure the rights. Saroyan was uninterested. Dear Ned, I see no reason why I should even talk business with the Cagneys, even through an agent, in view of the fact that, to begin with, they mucked up a very valuable property by casting and producing and directing it in a manner entirely out of order, insisting on the course they took, even though I urged them again and again to follow the course that was natural for the play, and, in fact, in view of the fact that since the event of the production of a fiasco, they have refused to respond promptly or fairly or intelligently to every reply I have made to their inquiries. Replies that I have made instantly upon being informed of their questions. I have plans of my own for the time of your life. Another film, possibly 3D, directed by myself, as a musical for Broadway, and as a television property, to go on indefinitely. This was the first clear mention of Saroyan looking at the play as a television property that we've been able to locate. This may have strictly been an idea at that point, but as he was regularly having plays made into television episodes, a half dozen by 1953, it seems like a natural. The only issue was that regular television formats at the time didn't allow for a play as long as The Time of Your Life. In fact, in a letter from Ben Medford, Medford said, "Don't settle for anything less than 90 minutes. One of the most important and respected television anthology programs of the 1950s was Playhouse 90. Starting in 1956, CBS ran Playhouse 90 as its prestige program. It started with a Rod Serling penned episode, Forbidden Area, which starred Charlton Heston. The second episode, also written by Serling, was a remarkable and important episode in the history of television. Requiem for a Heavyweight. This won multiple Emmys, a Golden Globe, and the prestigious Peabody Award. That alone established Playhouse 90 as one of the most important series, and further episodes featured major actors and writers. John Frankenheimer directed more episodes than anyone else, and would go on to direct many motion pictures, including The Birdman of Alcatraz and The Manchurian Candidate. One of the producers of Playhouse 90 was Martin Manulis. He had been producing for television since at least 1951, including two CBS series he created, The Best of Broadway and Climax. During his time he produced those, he was in touch with Saroyan. In a letter dated October 4th, 1954, Saroyan refers to a letter from Manulis dated September 30th, and sends an 89-page teleplay version of The Time of Your Life. Saroyan noted that he had cut out an entire storyline, the Dudley, Lorraine, Elsie telephone love connection storyline, and Saroyan declared, "I think the play is in first-class shape now." This likely would have been written for The Best of Broadway, though the show had been canceled in May of 1955. If the script was delivered in October of 54, it's unlikely it would have been intended for the 54-55 television season. Manulis also was a producer on Playhouse 90. One of the driving forces appears to have been not only producer Manulis, but another longtime Saroyan friend, John Houseman. Houseman had directed the premiere of Hello Out There at the Pasadena Playhouse with Darryl Zanuck. Houseman was not a regular producer on Playhouse 90, but was on the team, which made sense as he was one of the best-known figures of the American stage. While those two may have been a path towards getting it made, there's certainly a role in that production for the star of the episode, Jackie Gleason. One of the biggest stars in the early days of television was Jackie Gleason. He had come to television after years as a comedian and a decade appearing in films. After World War II, where he was found to be unfit for service due to his weight and a poorly healed broken arm, he appeared somewhat erratically in film and radio programs. In 1949, his big small-screen break happened in the form of a role as the title character in The Life of Riley. The original radio version had starred William Bendix, who incidentally had appeared in both the original stage and film versions of The Time of Your Life. Gleason starred in the program until 1950, when he became the host of Cavalcade of Stars on the Dumont Network. There, he developed characters through a series of skits. One of those characters was Ralph Cramden. That character became exceptionally popular. In 1952, CBS offered a contract to Gleason that gave him a 500% raise. The series was renamed The Jackie Gleason Show. This became one of the most popular shows on television. And in 1955, when the series ended, The Honeymooners, based on the Ralph Cramden character, began for a 2-year run on CBS. Despite its short reign, The Honeymooners has been one of the crucial and influential shows in the history of television. Gleason and Saroyan had met by early 1942, and possibly earlier. It's known that Saroyan and Carol Marcus, then early in their relationship, had been joined at the nightclub Eugene's in early 42 by Jackie Gleason. The two seem to have been in contact on and off, though not particularly frequently. They certainly ran in similar circles in Hollywood, and both were exceptionally fond of drink. Ties to Gleason are all over the episode's cast and crew list. Gleason had been a featured player in a Menoulis-produced episode of The Best of Broadway, called The Show-Off. Writer A.J. Russell was credited as adapting that play for TV, and had worked as a writer on The Jackie Gleason Show, and had also written The Laugh Maker for Studio One, starring Gleason. Actors Tom Gorman and Bert Freed had worked with Gleason previously, and Gloria Vanderbilt had socialized with Gleason and Saroyan both. In fact, Vanderbilt was the best friend of Saroyan's wife, Carol Marcus. And the two are believed to have been amalgamated into the character Holly Golightly by Truman Capote for Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's clear that Gleason's hand was in action with the production, and Menoulis was also bringing his influence, as many of the names had appeared on The Best of Broadway and Climax. The play itself was a guiding principle, as well as its previous productions. Vanderbilt had appeared in the French Otone version, and Kit Carson was played by James Barton, who was reprising his role from the original film production with the Cagneys a decade earlier. The entire cast is a strong one. Gleason, with his boozy persona being very public and beloved, as Joe, is a natural. Betsy Palmer was a young actress cast as Kitty Duvall. She was a regular on anthology programs and would only make a few film appearances until 1980, when she played Mrs. Voorhees in Friday the 13th, which launched her as an icon in horror films for the rest of her life. Jack Klugman was a major star, appearing on both screen and Broadway. He would go on to fame as Oscar Madison in The Odd Couple, both on stage and on television. Here, he played Nick, the barkeep, with a comedic stoicism that marked several other performances of the role, especially William Bendix's in the 1948 film. Dick York, who would become a major star for his turn as Darren in Bewitched, played Joe's lackey, Tom. Bert Freed played Blick, the corrupt cop. He was a career actor known for playing heavies. The episode aired on October 9, 1958, and the initial reaction to the production was highly positive. Jack Gould reviewed the episode on October 10th. The time of your life, William Saroyan's warm and boozy appreciation of the human race was revived with care and feeling last night on Playhouse 90 over Channel 2. It was a decided hit. Jackie Gleason, in quite possibly his most winning performance on TV, gave a surprisingly touching and compassionate performance as Joe, the philosophic barfly who loves people. If any viewers thought he would employ the broad strokes of his vaudeville characterizations, they found themselves in happy error. Mr. Saroyan's work had to be trimmed somewhat for television by A.J. Russell, but the adaptation was a sound job. There was no serious loss of the beautiful mood as Mr. Saroyan's undisciplined theatrical poem wandered off first one way and then the other in its fondness for human beings. The San Francisco honky-tonk remains one of civilization's most cherished places. Gleason's performance was lauded, as was Klugman's and James Barton's. Betsy Palmer's performance is more pronounced than Gene Cagney's in the film, with a bit more fire to her delivery. Her interactions with Gleason are not nearly as warm as the interactions between Jean and Jimmy Cagney, and here that works incredibly well. Kitty is angrier and better situated to television of the time. The Independent said, "Producer Gordon Duff and director Tom Donovan assembled a fine cast, headed by Gleason, and including Betsy Palmer, Dick York, Jack Klugman, Bobby Van, Dina Merrill, Bert Freed, and the great James Barton, recreating his stage role as Kit Carson. Individual performances were superb, an adjective I have not been able to use for quite a few months. Gleason submerged his own personality in the characterization of Joe, and Dick York, last seen on Playhouse 90 as Paul Muni's son in The Last Clear Chance, delivered just the right contrast as Tom, Joe's not-too-bright friend." Ben Gross said, "Jackie Gleason, the robust comedian who is also determined to become a great actor, tested his talents again in a straight role during Playhouse 90's production of William Saroyan's The Time of Your Life, Thursday night. In another step toward this laudable goal, he gave an affectionate, at times moving performance, worthy of anyone's respect." Praise was not universal, though certainly higher than for the earlier film version. The UPI's reviewer, William Ewald, said, "I did not enjoy it. It's a piece that should be played with a merry-go-round, with an pa, a swirl of pink horses, and a shout. Instead, it was played almost solemnly, something like a coronation procession or a stately gavotte." The AP's review was, "The Time of Your Life is mediocre television for the middle-aged." Gleason had been trying to become more of a dramatic actor, and this might have been the most interesting of his early attempts at being a serious actor. 3 years later, he would earn rave reviews as Minnesota Fats in The Hustler, alongside Paul Newman. Saroyan, who could be exceptionally tough on those adapting his work, actually sent the actor a note after he saw the episode. He said that Gleason had provided an excellent Joe. Once again, The Time of Your Life would see several revivals following a media adaptation. While none made it to Broadway, there were several touring and local productions in 1959 through 1961. Over the next 15 years, there would be several significant stagings, including one with Henry Fonda. When Juilliard's head of drama, Saroyan's buddy John Houseman, wanted to start a touring company for his students to gain experience on the roads, one of their first productions was The Time of Your Life. As the group, eventually known as the Acting Company, ended its tour of the play, it was recorded for PBS. This production is full of young actors who would go on to become major stars of stage, television, and film. Our next episode will look at the production of The Time of Your Life, shot for television, featuring Patti LuPone, Kevin Kline, an appearance by the voice of William Saroyan himself. Thank you for listening to Saroyan on Screen. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.